Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about Venus in conjunct to Saturn in the natal chart. So if you were born with Venus in conjunct or quincunx to Saturn in your natal chart. So yesterday I talked about the square between Venus and Saturn, and this is similar, but it's happening in a lot more of an internal way. And the inconjunct aspect is harder to pin down, so it might actually take longer for the person to realize that their internal messages are not very positive as far as self-worth goes and love life goes. There's a lot of beliefs that need to be worked on there, but it's a more internal thing, and they're not quite as aware that this is going on as with the other Venus Saturn hard aspects. So there's more of just an uncertainty with relating with others. It's not always going to come up as like a full on feeling of insecurity. It's like more of a vague feeling of insecurity that can sometimes come up and feel very huge. And then other times when they fully shut down Saturn, they can actually feel very confident and maybe even do things in their love life or in their financial life that their Saturn doesn't actually approve of. So that's the thing with the inconjunct aspect, is even more than with the square, the opposition, it's hard for us to be both of these energies simultaneously. So it can actually end up leading to inaction or sometimes very unbalanced actions. So when this person is allowing their Venus to run the show, they can feel a lot better, but then what they will find is that they'll look back on their actions when they, go back to their Saturn energy and feel regret and feel like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And this can be related to love life where, they've allowed themselves to be used, or they've allowed themselves to enter into relationships where they were being not treated well, or maybe they're like the side piece and they're not okay with that. They can find themselves in relationship scenarios where they didn't really mean to be there. It's very interesting when Venus is in conjunct to Saturn. It can also show that sometimes in a sexual scenario they get into situations where they didn't mean to have sex, or they didn't mean to come off sexually, or if they did, they regret it later. And it's really hard to find a balance. Now, the other thing that could happen here is, rather than that, if Saturn is stronger, this can actually slow Venus so much that there isn't a lot of relationships. There isn't a lot to regret financially because they're more conservative. They maybe spend all their days working and, striving to be better. And so that they actually don't have a lot of social life. They don't have a lot of relationships. It seems like people never come into their life that are right for them, and they feel cut off from love, and they feel like they're deprived or like almost like starved for love and relationships. So it's actually common though where they'll have phases in their life of both, and it's really hard for them to actually have a healthy relationship that is not unbalanced in any way. That's something that's common with this in conjunction, is entering into relationships where they're being taken advantage of, they're being used. Or it's also common with Venus Saturn, but specifically Venus in conjunct to Saturn, where they can get into a relationship where they're acting as a parent to that person, or even like the books will say they're caring for like a sick or disabled person in their relationships, and there's something about that that makes them feel worthy, or that makes them feel comfortable, because they're so used to, in a sense, and this is sounding depressing, but I'll talk about the good parts too, because there's good parts to every aspect, but they're very used to depressing circumstances and disappointment, and they might not even realize that this is going on under the surface. This is going on in their unconscious, because it's the inconjunction. It's far more unconscious to us, but they definitely have a belief in like perpetual lack and disappointment. And when they get into these relationships that are not very happy, or not very balanced, or not very equal, it all feels very normal to them. And they might not even realize how not normal that is. Like, this is why these inconjunctions really have to be talked about, because with Venus or Mars inconjunct to Saturn, we can see people getting involved in relationships or sexual relationships where they're not being treated well, and they don't even know, because it's more unconscious. And maybe there's things about it that are good. It's just really hard to balance the Venus energy with the Saturn energy and be them at the same time. That it's like, if we find pleasure in it, if we love them, it's going to be disappointing, or it's going to be a burden. Saturn, right? So it's really hard to get into a relationship where we actually feel pleasure, we feel love, we feel our femininity, we feel our heart, but then also Saturn says, oh yeah, this is good for me, this is healthy for me, this is stable, right? So it's hard to have something that's stable that we actually love. So it's a tricky one to live with, and it can definitely delay love. In women, it can be especially damaging to their feminine energy, where there could have been early messages. This is similar to what I said about Venus square Saturn, but it might be more unconscious to them, that their early childhood messages or past life messages were kind of like saying that being feminine, being a woman, being in a female body is worthless, and like you're only worthy for what you can do for people, or how men can use you, and things like that. So it's not like there's not a lot of appreciation for being a woman, and they can feel cursed for being a woman. Now, a man with this in conjunction can end up in a relationship with a woman who's very cold, or that he's also seeking, like, people with this in conjunction can be attracted to unavailable people, or people that are using them, or even being used financially is sometimes a theme too. So yeah, it's definitely a tricky one, and it's very noticeable to me, the astrologer, when someone has this, but it's often, these inconjunctions aren't as noticeable to the person that has them. And I know from experience in the ones that I have in my chart that, even though traditional astrological interpretations gloss over or kind of miss these, they're actually, in my opinion, far more powerful than even the other aspects, because of the kind of unconsciousness or vagueness that they produce, where it produces such an unease, right? Where it can actually contribute to health problems. So this in conjunction, the health problems, if you do experience health problems, if you do experience financial problems, it's to do with the mind-body association, is because there is a lack of self-worth. It's because of the belief that they don't deserve love, or love is pain, or they have to sacrifice for love, or love is like, you don't get to have love in favorable conditions, is kind of like a message of this in conjunction. Like, you can't actually be happy in love, or you can't actually be sexually attracted and with someone who's stable. Like, it's a hard to balance thing here. So the remedy for this is that they do need to work on those internal messages, and know that they are worthy, know that they are lovable. I think that's a big part of it, is that their unconscious messages was that they were not worthy, not lovable. And also, as a woman with this aspect, you're going to want to do some type of feminine energy work or appreciation, focusing on your beauty, focusing on your good qualities, getting your hair done, and knowing that it's not superficial to focus on those needs, like going to the spa or and even deeper things, of course, energetic things, understanding that men and women are equal, and that like you're so valuable. You're like, tapping into like goddess energy and queen energy and the divine feminine energy for both men and women with this aspect, but specifically women even more so, or people that identify with the feminine energy the most. It's like so important to resolve that split in consciousness that has allowed you to like subvert or push to the side your femininity, your joy, your pleasure, your inner child, and allow that beauty to come out, because you're no less beautiful than anyone else. You're no less good in a relationship or sexually. Like, these are all just beliefs in your head. None of it is actually true. And if anything, you have such a deep capability for love and such a gift in relationships, because this has been something you've struggled with, or even financially. These people can end up accumulating a lot of wealth because there's such a strong work ethic, and there's such a seriousness around love and money that you do end up having the upper hand in these areas. But you just have to realize that you're no less than anybody else, and actually you're perfect as you are. And you've chosen to work through these certain themes in this lifetime, and it's all a part of your soul path. And really meditating on your Venus Saturn energies, because that sign of Venus is what you're going to need to feel your self-love, to feel your self-worth, your femininity, and just your love language, how you're going to communicate in love. And then your Saturn, your life lessons, your karma, what you feel is right, what you have to learn, what you can't avoid. You have to find a way, by meditating on these two sign placements, how can you be them in unison, right? How can you be in love and express your heart without letting Saturn tell you that that's not good enough, or that's like the wrong person? Like, how can you be both of them at the same time? It's not going to be easy. Your love relationships will look different. It is common to have relationships with people that are older, or sometimes you're the older person. There is a Saturnian theme going to be in love, but if you can have someone in synastry that even aspects both your Venus and Saturn in some way or something, you can have love, and like all of these negative messages were just a lie, and you're perfect as you are. And yeah, it's definitely a tricky one to have. Inconjunctions to Venus are so difficult because they can definitely manifest as self-worth issues, or even financial issues, and obviously love and relationships and heart work. With Venus inconjunctions or Venus squares, we have to do work on our heart and tending to our inner self and our feminine energy. So I'd love to know your experience of this aspect, if you've had it in your natal chart. Was it like this? Let me know in the comments, you guys. And thank you so much for watching. Talk soon. Bye.